Please join me in welcoming Christopher to the stage.
Guten Tag. My name is Christopher Stapleton, and I'm a co-founder of the Virtual World Society. We're still in our incubator year, so we haven't started officially, but we're looking around for people and ideas and energy to really start a movement. I have no technology to sell, I'm sorry. We're looking beyond the technology and the tools to the people and the ideas and the communities of communities around the world that are going to bring this technology to life. And I want to talk to you about Real World Laboratories. The purpose of these is to stimulate innovation for those who need it most. Not necessarily for those who can pay the highest price, not those who are going to seek fame and fortune, but as Ori said in the beginning, to advance humanity, we need to lift humanity. And all of humanity, all of society. And we're looking at Real World Laboratories to do just that. So I've been working with and experimenting with this idea of Real World Laboratories for 15 years. And before that, my experience was on Broadway, feature films in New York, music videos, then went on to LA, create mega theme parks around the world for Disney and Universal. And I got to a point of saying, you know, how am I going to be remembered? Not that I was narcissistic, but you know, you think about those. What's on my gravestone? And I was thinking, Christopher Stapleton devoted his life to helping others pass time. I was like, well, entertainment doesn't seem so exciting that way, you know? What do? I pass time for people. So what I did is I quit a very successful entertainment career, started a laboratory in the university with no money, no space, no equipment, no resources, and started playing with the technology, bringing people of different things, and started to go into different places in the world that had problems. I'm a designer, I love problems. And so I wanted to go into these venues of problems, whether it was the schools or the hospitals or the battlefield or the operating room, and really kind of go in and see how can this new cool technology really work better, using entertainment as a means versus an end, because entertainment is not only a powerful idea in art, it is an international language. Entertainment, story, play, and game is how we operate on our brain, in our bodies, in our society. Before civilization, before language, there was play, there was story, and there were games that we naturally work with. And that's where I explored the idea of virtuality. But I didn't want to decide between real or virtual or AR. The AR vs VR argument doesn't work for me. I want it all. And so in this, I was working with all these different types of experiments and developing new ideas, new techniques, bringing in new talent and bringing it together to really get innovation to those who need it most, to make a difference, to transform a life, to save a life, to reinvent a life, and to have that life transformational experience as my outcome, not just to mixed realities. I am partnering with my co-founder, Tom Furness, who's considered the grandfather of VR. I really consider him more like the Dumbledore of VR because he's such a gracious personality, and he's been here and researching VR for 50 years. I've been only doing it for 25 years. I'm half the man he was. But the thing is that he has the same spirit as I do. So what? So what we can mix these things? So what we can put it on our face? So what? And this is one of the things that we want to do with the Virtual World Society, is we want to unlock minds, link hearts in order to make a better world through this technology by going beyond the technology, the tools, to the people and the ideas and the communities that are coming together to make that happen. Now, the idea and experiment for Real World Laboratories came up with my partnership with Nasir Nawab, who's in Munich, at the Technical University of Munich. And there I worked in this computer-aided medical procedures lab that he has actually embedded into the hospital, side by side with the operating room. So in between operations, surgeons came into the computer science lab. When a helicopter landed with a new patient ready, in polytraumatic emergency room. Computer scientists could follow surgeons around and understand their workflow, understand what was powerful, what was meaningful as far as tools, and be able to see how they could insert new ideas into that workflow without disrupting, but advancing and uplifting the power that the surgeons have. And what was interesting is that the things that they thought were brilliant, the surgeons thought were just a waste of time and in the way. And the things that computer scientists kind of thought were just nothing, the surgeon said, oh my God, this is going to change my life. So we can't anticipate the user's need. We got to get in there in the same space. We have to be embedded into that venue of problems to really understand the user, to see how we can help. And we learn as much from the user because the user is the #1 innovator in that innovation cycle, what's very important. And so this is one of the things that we've been working on and building on and developing on. And Tom and I want to incorporate it into the Virtual World Society so we can inspire and nurture and support real world laboratories in every venue that has problems, that we can bring this technology because those are the people that are going to help us see how transformative this technology is going to be. And what we learned in Nasir's laboratory is that this transdisciplinary collaboration was critical. And what that is, it's not multidisciplinary, it's not cross-disciplinary, it's not interdisciplinary. This is transdisciplinary, which means that you work in another person's problem space. That's a lot of problems because once you go into another person's problem space, you are a novice. You might be an experienced, articulate, well-educated novice, but you're a novice in that problem space. And you have to be comfortable with being a novice because what that brings is new insight. That naivete is the secret ingredient for innovation, to reimagine the problem so that we can get a breakthrough. And so me as an artist going into a computer science lab that's in a hospital, I don't know about medical, I know about computer science just enough to be dangerous, but I'm not a computer scientist. But they opened up. And what was interesting, the way people get out of their rut of disciplines, the rut of sector, whether you're civic, commercial, academic, is to get a problem big enough, meaningful enough, for them to get out of their personality, to get out of their institution, to get out of their normal aspect, and really be able to kind of take joy in the problem and liberating with innovation. And so where the scientist is about truth that reveals the lie, as Picasso says, art is the lie that reveals the truth. They're the same coin, but two different sides. Where mathematics is an expression of insight, humanities is the insight of expression. So all of these are interrelated. And so Nasir brought the science, technology, engineering, and math. I brought the humanities, design, and media, and art. And we were really able to close that loop of the innovation cycle. And it was magical and powerful. And this is where we want to start to bring this idea to more people. The one I want to explain is the one I'm doing right now. A couple years ago, I had a dear friend who had a stroke and got aphasia. Who knows what aphasia is? Okay. Aphasia is a loss of language due to a stroke, but not intelligence. So they're trapped in their minds, all their experience, all their training, all their education, trapped. To some people, it's suicidal. To some people, it's such depression, they get removed from life and isolated. And the isolation is worse than the aphasia. And when they go to therapy, they're taught drill and practice language. And that's exactly what their disability is. What we want to do is work with their abilities, not their disabilities. Not try to make them normal, because normal is a myth. We have to discover the quality of life in each person's lives. And with aphasia, what we did is I went into the lab. I went with Dr. Whiteside, who had the aphasia house, and we did some traumatic brain injury research with mixed reality, and it worked really well. So we said, well, let's try it out with aphasia. So I went into their clinic, which is the largest training facility in the world for training aphasia therapists. It's not that big, but it is the largest in the world because there's not that much. But there's 2 million Americans with aphasia, many more in the world. And so what our approach was is to start with the problem. And with that problem, go through the complete cycle and not stop until we have a solution that can come back to all the people who need it and that can deliver it. We need to make that problem the solution, but we have to go through a process. Now, you're familiar with the prototypes and the products, but one of the things we realized is that we need a promotype. A promotype is something that promotes the idea. It doesn't prove anything outside of, it reimagines the problem, thus reimagining the solution. And it's what a science fiction movie does, but this is more of an experiment. And what we do is we create something that could be, and saying, well, what if? And putting people in and see how they react. And we did this with mixed reality. What we were working with, first of all, is a project we did with NASA to help with teaching innovation skills to youth, is that we invented this interface called the Phygital Interspace. Phygital, digital, that you fidget with, because we think as much with our hands as with our minds. But the interspace, when we saw computers in museums, all the kids were sucking face with that monitor. We don't want that. We found out social learning is where we could drive them more. They need to be looking at each other, not the monitor. So instead of the interface, there was an interspace between people and media. And so together, the Phygital Interspace is a whole new paradigm we looked at in framing experience, design, and virtuality. And so we brought it to this experiment, and we took and just started doing therapy, and we created this story world that the attention was off of them, and the focus was them expressing a story. And this is
when you're robbed of your ability to communicate, you're robbed of the essence of who you are. Aphasia is a loss of language due to some type of a brain injury, usually stroke, but it can be disease, it can be trauma, it can be a tumor. Story is so critical to what we do as a speech-language pathologist. And I think when we take story out of what we do, all it is drill and practice. And in the midst of that, like you said, if the therapist is in there with you, I can be feeding you some language to augment, to help you.
Right.
But you're telling the story. It's your story.
Right.
I don't believe virtual reality can do that because I believe the element of relationship isn't there. And I believe that for the person with aphasia, that interconnection with another human being is extremely important for them.
It's really cool.
It is
It's
cool.
really
isn't
cool
it?
to see, because you can see behind you, there's really cool stuff back there.
What is behind there? What are you seeing?
I see you, and I see where a lot of the trees and snapgrass
Okay.
right there, and a couple, here's a big one, a really nice big one.
But think how much more enriching it is if it's connected to a story, and particularly your story, what you want to be talking about. Then those 20 words are your words, and it's telling your story. Let's say you put on that head-mounted device, and it was as if you were at a construction scene.
Right. Oh.
And you could tell me what you were doing at that construction
Oh, yeah, I
scene.
could say that. I could do it.
You could do it.
Yeah, I could do it. Yes.
You could do it.
Yeah, I could.
Once one of them put on the head-mounted device and saw where he was, all of a sudden his sentence structure became normal, which was very surprising. And then would that build your confidence
Yes. Yes, it would.
that you could go out and do something?
Yes, it would.
And how would that make you feel?
Oh, God. Too much.
Yeah, you're right. So when we have people come here, what we really want to do is instill hope in them. We want them to know that they still have a quality of life.
So in that area, you heard the man's voice. That innovation was liberating, not disruptive. And as we go in there, we realize there's much more. So the virtuality continuum, what we developed that into not only a high-tech version, we actually went and started getting 100% real with the story trove concept, but we realized that will be more accessible. And the mixed reality was not the solution, but it was the solution to find the solution. Now it's 100% reality-based so that we can help them work with story creation. We get into, and so that virtuality continuum is not a choice, it's a palette. so we can make whatever we want, real or virtual. And we need to build that environment. But we also have to talk about what Steve Mann talks about, is mediality. Mediality is how do we mediate these worlds based upon what we want and what we need. If we don't need it, we can get rid of it. We have it, it's not overlay. It is creating our worlds towards us. And so how we either consume or create our environment is all that mediation or mediality, that we have to look in that landscape. But there's another thing that's very important, that's my specialty, is the imaginality. So you have this aspect that we have real and we have virtual, we have augmented, that's all external stimulus, great. But the magic's behind the eyeballs in your imagination. It's the external and the internal. And what was happening with aphasia patients is everything was happening internal because the blocks were externally. But we were able to powerfully kind of be able to have them express their imagination and share their imagination with others and really work with communication versus language, look at expression versus linguistics. And that was a very powerful thing, and that what they could do is with their imagination overcome with story. And story is a very powerful tool. And so we have these three things going on at the same time. And I look back to building theme parks. I've been working with all three of these continuums together. And what we need to do is really look at how we transition story, which transcends medium, to storytelling, which is dependent upon the medium, and understand and differentiate. And now we have the responsibility, like when film first came around, cinematic language didn't happen. We have to create a whole new language with all the things that we talked about today to understand what is the language of virtual worlds. And this is one of the important things we want to do in Real World Labs. And right now, to see this 3D world we have of virtuality, imaginality, mediality, we need to work on all of those things, not just the technology. And what's interesting right now is the stuff that we worked with Aphasia, they taught us more than we were able to help them. Because now we're taking this story trove concept and bringing it into teaching history, teaching language. We're even going to get a Space Florida grant to help astronauts be not so isolated in deep space by using these areas of innovation, of communication, of story and connection across time with asynchronous communication. So it's very powerful that we are not helping others that are disadvantaged by stepping down and lifting them up to our level. That we can learn as much from them and helping them that they can help us overcome our obstacles with the technology. And I think it's very important that Real World Laboratories get a movement so that we can start looking at helping others who need it most to find the answers we're searching for faster, better, easier. And we basically want to make these Real World Laboratories a kind of a Peace Corps of VR, to get out there and unlock minds, link hearts, and make a better world together. Thank you.